Hello there, I'm Steve from Mac84, and today we're going to be talking about VCF Midwest, Vintage Computer Festival Midwest 18 to be exact. This is their 18th show, as the name implies, and it took place in early September 2023. I had an amazing time visiting this event again, seeing old friends, rummaging through the free pile, and all sorts of other things. So in this video, I'd like to show you some of my experience. But I'd also like you to remember that a lot of other people visited the events as well. So I'm going to put links in the video description to other videos chronicling their experiences at this event too, because it's really cool to see other people's perspectives of the show, what they saw, who they talked to, what they bought, and what they found at the free pile, and so on. And with that being said, let's start that musical montage. Here we are on Friday. I'm passing by this cool LAN party setup, which was very nice to see running throughout the event. But Friday was the setup day for vendors and exhibitors. I took a bit of video here, but it's a bit fast and wobbly, as I was way too excited and obviously didn't coordinate where I was looking and where I was pointing the camera, so sorry about that. There's my pal Ron on the right, but still there was a lot to see on Friday. I'm just walking down this corridor here and making my way to the free pile. There's my friend Steve there on the left waving to me. And my goodness, was there a free pile this year. Holy moly. In the pile, there were a bunch of boxes from Computer Reset. So I was glad to grab a cable and say, hey, I have something from Computer Reset. It's my friend Garth there shoving a graphics card in my face. But there were a bunch of printers, there were a bunch of monitors, there were keyboards, software, cables, adapters, guts of old electronic projects, and parts from who knows what. But it's also there where I bumped into a few people I knew and some other folks that I only recognized from online, like my friend John here in the middle digging through some boxes. It was very dangerous because I would go through the pile, find some cool things, return to my room to drop it off, and then I'd repeat the process by coming back and looking again to see what I have missed. This was the biggest collection of free stuff that I've ever seen at one of these events. If you went digging around, chances are you'd find something handy in one of those boxes. They did eventually move a lot of this stuff outside, I believe on Saturday, to give more room in the hallway for people walking by. But just look at this mountain of stuff. It's not a free pile anymore, it's a free mountain. And there were quite a lot of tempting things, but of course I flew, so I didn't have space in my luggage. And then you have this Little Tykes computer by IBM. LGR posted a short video about this, of him finding it in a thrift store once. But this looks like it's a slightly different variation of that, but it's up and running with all the parts, so that was cool. So here's me just standing in front of the booth and just panning around on Friday. Quite a lot of activity going on. Sorry things are blurry. I should have set my camera to 60 frames per second. But anyway, yeah, here's our booth. There's me, my good pal Ron of Ron's Computer Videos. Eric didn't put up his poster yet, but he was there. Ron had this awesome setup here of a Macintosh SE and just showing with all of these little breakout boards and a RGB to HDMI adapter of how you could basically power a Macintosh SE logic board and split the video out to an LCD using a bunch of these TTL and other adapters. Be sure to check those out, they're available at jcm-1.com if you're interested. Just checking in on that free mountain again, as other vendors started to set up their tables and position their booths with goodies for people to buy and browse through for the whole weekend. There was actually quite a lot of Mac stuff available this year that I was not expecting. Sometimes you get a booth where somebody has some interesting stuff, like my pal Steve here. As a big Mac dork, it's always nice to see some Next machines or some Apple machines up and running, so those are always a welcome sight. And then my new friends Ted and Carl set up this huge booth, just full of plenty of Mac stuff. They had basically one of everything here: PowerBooks, Macintosh Portables, Quadra 840 AVs, 20th anniversary Macintoshes, Quadra 900s or 950s, almost every PowerBook form factor, Performas, PowerMacs, 68K Macs, G4s, G3s, just too many Macs. I loved it. Many trips to the free pile meant many trips back and forth to my room. I think that's Clint and his brother Luke there on the right. And yeah, just taking in some of the beautiful weather that the day had to offer. Fridays are always crazy at these events. They always go by way too quick. I mean, you're trying to spend time setting up your booth or your exhibit, and then you notice a friend you haven't seen in a while, or somebody setting up something cool at their booth, or something in the free pile, or there's something for sale, and you have to worry about having lunch or dinner, or maybe there's an after event or something. But this is the time I really cherish, because you do have sort of one-on-one time with other exhibitors and vendors to catch up and chat before the insanity of Saturday when things open up to the public. Now on to Saturday, the first official day of the show.
Here we have Steve at the Clarion Inn.
This was about 20 or 25 minutes before the show had opened, and my goodness, people were lining up already, and it was quite a big crowd, more than I've seen at previous years. Due to the fully packed tables inside, there were actually some outdoor vendors this year, which I thought was nice because it was a change of pace of walking around inside. You got some fresh air, and there were more things to see on display. These folks had a very cool Sony Glasstron set of glasses, and I wish I had room in my luggage because I thought that would be pretty neat to play around with. I ran into some of my geeky friends from VCF East, so it was nice to see some familiar faces as we got ready to enter the show. While all the attendees were waiting outside, I did hear that one of the exhibitors noticed that the doors from the hotel side of things were open, allowing us exhibitors to get in there and set up just before the rush of the crowd. So I made my way inside to the booth, which was graciously set up by my good friend Ron of Ron's Computer Videos. I'd be sharing the booth with him and my friend Eric from Eric's Edge. This was just before the floodgates opened, so I wanted to take some video of things being sort of calm. At this point, it was mostly exhibitors putting some final touches on their displays, but you could just see the massive amount of things here. Sorry that things are a little bit blurry. I was a little excited to get footage of things before the crowds just opened up. We have Clint from LGR here, we have Ken of the Computer Clan, among many other awesome setups and displays. And making their VCF Midwest debut, we have none other than the Barabyte PC. I made my way to the main entrance as things were just about to open up, walking by a few notable tables, including the lovely blue SCSI table, which had a very interesting Macintosh SE30 and a color display attached to it. And here come the attendees. The floodgates were opened and people slowly made their way in. Although there was some initial confusion because on the left there was the table where you could buy t-shirts, which always go fast. So a few people started lining up for those. But I think people thought that you needed to wait and get a ticket or something. But the show was free. There was no admission required. So people ended up waiting in line, maybe without a reason for knowing why they were waiting in line. Now, Vintage Computer Festival Midwest is the largest vintage computer event that I've ever been to, and it continues to be that way. I mean, just look at all these people. And this year, what they've actually done is they moved all the talks and the auction downstairs, because last year there was a separate event in that area. But moving that downstairs opened up a slightly smaller ballroom adjacent to all the other rooms. This helped with the flow of traffic a bit and gave attendees and exhibitors a bit more breathing room. However, this hallway here still got super crowded as it was the main entry point to all of those ballrooms. Oh hey look, it's Sean.
Resurrecting QT40. There'll be a lunch break at noon and then we'll resume at 1:30 with the Vintage Computer YouTubers panel. You are welcome to VCF Midwest 18, the only VCF that dares to be as free as you want to be.
One of the best things about these events is meeting old friends again, like my friend Eric here, and just hanging out and being silly and stupid. And I mean that in the best possible way. We had an absolute blast at the show this year. We had some cool freebies at our table, including some stickers and buttons, which were a big hit.
Our first visitor to the table.
What are these computer things? do you know anything about IBM?
My good pal Garth was one of the first visitors to the booth, so congrats to him. Having a booth to call home at VCF Midwest was a new experience for me. Again, big thanks to Ron for setting this up. Usually I just wander around aimlessly until I run out of money or space in my bag. But having a booth also meant I was there for people to find and take a selfie with and say hello to or sign something for. So I tried to stay at my booth mostly, but I did also dart off to help other people with their booths and their setups and, of course, check the free pile once in a while. But I'm not complaining, not at all. My goodness, my poor friends Clint, Ken, and others were slammed non-stop, so kudos for them for surviving the show. I know it could be rough. Saying the show was busy is an understatement. Since it's a free event, it's hard to really gauge the amount of visitors, but it certainly felt busier than last year, even with the modified layout. In 2022, the floor plan consisted of a long L-shaped hallway and 3 ballrooms, plus a 4th room dedicated for talks and the auction. This year, they opened up that room for more exhibits and used a smaller room downstairs for the talks and the auction. This did seem to help the flow of traffic a little bit, but the hallway was still packed and there's obviously a limit to how many people you could cram into this space. While this conference center does have its own charm, it's hard not to think that the show has grown beyond the limits of its venue. A lot of us were feeling that last year, and I think that was cemented this year as well. I suppose that's a good problem to have for the event overall. The interest for these weird beige boxes is growing. younger folks are becoming more interested in the hobby, and the legends of the free pile tempt new visitors. But I'm sure the logistics of planning an event like this either here or at another venue is a daunting one. Let me just take a moment to recognize the amazing work, planning, and preparation that goes on behind the scenes by the amazing VCF folks and volunteers. These people work tirelessly to put on a show that's 100% free to all exhibitors and visitors. That's right, free. That's why every year I buy a VCF t-shirt, I make a donation, and I end up getting outbid on items at the auction. Heck, this year I even donated an item for the auction, but more on that later. The space in the ballrooms flowed pretty okay, but this single hallway acted as the only point to those rooms, and it was always jam-packed. This year there were so many vendors and exhibitors that there were even some popping up outside. I thought this was nice as it allowed you to get some fresh air and get some of your personal space back, and thankfully the weather cooperated. The connected hotel is nothing to write home about, but my particular room was okay, and the hotel sadly doesn't have an elevator, so you run the risk of needing to carry heavy items like CRTs up and down the stairs. And if you have any dietary restrictions like me, you probably won't stop by their mini cafe for much more than a drink. That being said, the block of rooms went fast. As soon as I heard that they were available, I booked my room, but I know a lot of people who had to settle for adjacent hotels instead. However, you simply can't beat the convenience of being only a minute or two walk away from the free pile. While this looks pretty packed, there was still a long line of people waiting to come into the venue. This was around 10 a.m. when I made my way to the free pile here, and you could see that some of the boxes were already moved outside, but there was still plenty to dig through. However, by noon there were more boxes added to the mountain of stuff, and it was sort of a frenzy of people just gathering around to see what was new or if they missed anything the first time around. Hopefully you could sense the size of the show and the scope of things through my video, but I'd also encourage you to watch other coverage of VCF Midwest from my other fellow creators. Each of us had different things that caught our eye and drew our attention, and there are a ton of great videos out there, so please check the video description below for more delicious VCF Midwest goodness. I took a lunch break and returned to the show just before 2 p.m. There were some freebies outside to look through, but there were also some things for sale. The position of the free pile got very close to some of the tables and made it a bit confusing, but I understand this was a makeshift setup. I just hope that nobody walked away with something off of somebody's table by mistake. And with the outdoors, you get nature. Yeah, it looks like some of the empty boxes were near a wasp's nest or something, because there was a swarm of bees or whatnot buzzing around. But hey, maybe they were just looking for something in the free pile. Or I guess the bees have developed their own computer virus. Run! Besides the insects, there were a lot of awesome things on display at the free pile and with these vendors outdoors. Again, since I flew to the event, I did not have that much space in my luggage, but a lot of this stuff was very, very tempting. But there was more. At the front of the venue, there were also people setting up sort of like a flea market or a car boot sale-esque type thing, with tables with wares and hardware and software and, well, all the wares just on display. It was a nice change of pace to be outside in the fresh air and be able to walk around without bumping into so many people. And there were plenty of great deals to be had and interesting things to see, like this beautiful stack of Apple boxes. Tempting. But since electronics need, well, electricity, a lot of the cool stuff was still inside, like this massive IBM dot matrix printer that Owen was showing off to me. It was actually for sale for $200 US. I'm not sure if it actually sold, but yeah, there was no way that thing was making it on a plane, or even most cars. But it was cool to see this thing in action. We even got it to eep for us. Eep? It's stuff like this that VCF is all about. Seeing this stuff in person, talking to the person who lovingly restored it, and geeking out with the people who have similar passions as you do. Besides hanging out, one of the other favorite pastimes of VCF is acquiring new bulky gear to lug home. And what better way to do that than at the VCF Midwest auction? This directly supports the show and gives you an opportunity to potentially grab a great deal. You never know what you're going to find at an auction. However, they did have a preview list on their website so you could get an idea of some of the items that were for sale. But this auction had everything from a boxed Nabu computer from the 80s, to a bidding war spawning terminal, to a pyramid PC from LGR. I managed to stay and watch the majority of the auction. Not only was it a good place to sit and rest for a while, but it was wild seeing what went up for sale and what prices they went for. As previously mentioned, I donated something to the auction too. This was a few copies of vintage Mac software, including Mac Calc, some of its developer disks, and some historical documents. It only went for about $40 or so, but that still went to help VCF. After the auction, it was back upstairs. My good pal Sloopy and I, there he is, were checking out this awesome Apple exhibit set up by Peter. From a duo dock to a portable color style writer to this awesome Apple set-top box Model 3 prototype, it was really cool to see what he had on display. My friend Thomas was stuck behind his booth 99% of the time, toiling away at fixing things, but it was all worth it to resurrect this Commodore CD-TV. And of course I was lured back to the table that had a pile of Macs. My friend Ted and Carl had this lovely Quadra 840AV. It was listed for $300. It turns on, but it did not chime. And you know I have a weird fascination with these machines. It was very tempting, but I had no way to take it home. However, my friend Dana ended up buying their working Quadra 840AV. And later on, they offered to donate the non-working machine to me. So a huge thanks for the donation, and thank you to Dana for lugging it home for me. Hopefully we could get it to work sometime again soon. Another talk I just couldn't miss was by my friend Eric of Eric's Edge and co-hosted by my friend Ron of Ron's Computer Videos. They were talking about HyperCard authoring and programming, and this was really cool. There was a very energized crowd who wanted to know a lot more about HyperCard, and I thought it was really cool that they drew such a big crowd over such an old piece of software. It just shows that there's so much love for this stuff in this community. Don't worry if you missed the talk, it is recorded and available on the VCF Midwest YouTube channel. I'll put a link in the video description. Directly after their HyperCard talk, Ron and I had a talk about collecting vintage Apple PowerBooks. This was a successor to the popular Collecting Vintage Macs talk that Ron hosted last year and I co-hosted. You can watch recordings of both talks included in an extended version, and I'll put those links in the video description. It seems more people today are getting into vintage Macs who may never have owned one before. These systems can differ wildly in their operation, troubleshooting, and hardware when compared to traditional PCs. So as a couple of vintage Mac heads, we thought it would be fun to share some tips to newcomers and collectors alike. But essentially we talked about our favorite PowerBooks in the earlier 100 series, and things to be aware of when buying these PowerBooks, and how to get the most out of your portable vintage Mac. I think these talks are a lot of fun, and the purpose of them is to encourage new folks into collecting these Macs and give them a crash course on what to expect and be aware of. It's always a lot of fun to do these talks with my friend Ron, so hopefully we could do it again next year. Saturday is always a blur, as it's the first day of the event open to the public, but after the show closes down, a bunch of us are usually left trying to figure out how to continue hanging out. Thankfully, the VCF folks did keep the halls open a bit longer than last year. This was awesome. It gave us some time to unwind after dinner, work on our exhibits, and just walk around, see things that we couldn't see during the show, and mingle with other exhibitors. Sadly, it wasn't open all night, which is understandable, so afterwards we hung out in the seating area of the hotel's cafe for a few hours. This is the same thing that happened last year, but it's a small crowded space, but at least it was something. Last year I did stay out way too late and ended up ruining my voice, so this year I tried not to stay out too late. Sunday was more of the same. There were still plenty of people and it was still packed. However, since I knew people started to pack up not long after noon, I took the opportunity to walk around a bit more and see some of the exhibits before they vanished. Since there was a whole extra ballroom this year, there was a lot more to see, like a whole room full, and actually people started bringing stuff to my booth to share, like this old crusty Mac here. It's a bit of a legend. It all started back at VCF East a few years back, where this thing was buried and tortured, and, well, you know what? Mike here and his friends actually still got it up and running at VCF Midwest. That's right, there are photos and videos of this thing trying to boot up. That just tells you how resilient some of these machines really are. That's the only rough part of these shows. Saturday is really the only full day. It's kind of like you're just starting to get into your groove of everything, and then right after lunch on Sunday, everything winds down and gets packed up. I understand schedules and costs and such prevent this from being a larger event, but maybe Thursday can be a setup day, and Friday could be an exhibitors, vendors only type thing. Then we can just spend time hanging out without the pressure of being at your booth. I don't think Monday would work, as that's sort of the start of a work week, but who knows. All I know is I just kept hearing that a lot of folks were saying the event needs to be longer. Maybe that's just because these events mean a lot to us and we don't want them to end and they sort of seem to go by too quickly, but I guess either way it never feels like it's long enough. Honestly, that's probably a reason why I take so many photos and videos of these events, in a vain attempt to try and capture more of the event than I could process as it happens. Then at least I have something that I could always look back to. Well, it also helps me remember all the cool geeky stuff I saw. In closing, I think that's what makes these events so popular. It's a time to meet up with friends old and new and just catch up in person. Here we bring our treasures from home to celebrate the stories of these vintage systems that mean so much to us. It's also a chance to see some of the exciting new projects from the community. There's always some new genius gizmo or method to help get more life out of a 30, 40, or 50-year-old system. The vintage computing community is something I'm so proud to be a part of. It's more than just hoarding old parts in a basement. It's about being curious, figuring out how things work, discovering the untold story behind something that maybe was never released, or fixing up something that's been dormant for far too long. It's about helping each other, and it's about a sense of community and knowing that there are other folks out there that are just as passionate and excited about this geeky stuff as you are. Eventually, it was time to pack up on Sunday, so that meant one last look at the free pile and playing a game of Tetris to shove all the goodies that I acquired into my luggage.
It's over! No!
No gain. Work those muscles.
Game over, man! Game over, man!
If you'd like to see some of the stuff I picked up at the show, check out the live stream I did earlier. I'll put a link in the video description. I'd also like to thank everybody that I met at the event. It was so great to see all of you in person. Here are just a few photos of some of the folks that stopped by to say hello, but it was so nice signing things, saying hello, giving you a sticker, and just hanging out. But don't worry if you didn't get a chance to say hello, hopefully we'll all be doing this again sometime soon. But that's about it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you right here next time on Mac 84.
Quack.